On the most recent Koine Corner, we looked at the word tax collectors in the context of tax collectors and sinners coming to Jesus to hear what he had to say. Today we're going to focus on tax collectors and see where this word comes from and why it's important in the New Testament. So let's take a look. Hoi telonai is translated the tax collectors, plural, comes from telones, singular, tax collector, and telos is the first half of the word, and telos is a toll, a fee. And the second half of the word is a verb, oneomai, I buy. So a toll collector is someone, a tax collector is someone who has bought the right to collect a toll or a fee or a tax. Okay, so in the ancient world, there was a practice that we call tax farming. So there's big taxes that a subordinate power paid to a greater power, like tribute. But then there were smaller taxes that individuals were responsible for, like a poll tax, like a voting tax, like a census tax, like tolls along a highway, things like that. And the bigger powers would farm out that collection. They would sell the right to collect that tax. So the little taxes are being collected by someone who is an agent of the big power, and they have negotiated a deal to collect X amount. They don't get paid a salary, they don't make any money unless they over collect. Okay? So the big power has an expectation. Don't come back here with less than X. But if you manage to collect Y and maybe even Z, you get to keep Y and Z, but don't dare show up with less than X. Okay? That's tax farming. And tax farming is farmed out to private tax collectors. And universally, just like today, when you're driving down the road and you have to stop your car and throw money into the old basket at the toll booth, or now when your little Easy Pass beeps and the light flashes going through a toll, it feels unjust. I already paid to build this road. I've been paying taxes on everything I've looked at in my life, and now I have to kick in $1.25 every time I want to cross this bridge. There's something about it that feels unjust, and that goes all the way back to the ancient world. Nobody wants to pay the toll. Nobody wants to pay the per capita tax or a poll tax to vote or a census tax when they go and register their name and where they're living. So it was always assumed to be a dishonest occupation. Across time and place, these tax collectors who participate in this tax farming have been seen as dishonest or unjust people. In order for them to be profitable, they have to be overly aggressive at collecting the tax. If they only collect the minimum that's required, they'll starve, right? So we can see even in Luke chapter 3, verse 12, there's an admonition from Jesus to the tax collectors to collect only what you must. Like, don't try to get rich on the backs of your neighbors. Collect only what you must to satisfy the demand of the deal and to feed yourself and your family. This is not an occupation in which you should be trying to get rich. In the Jewish context, it gets even deeper because it's looked at as a special category of sin. You are not only fleecing your fellow people, your fellow Jews, you are giving the money to, in this case, the Romans in the first century. The money is going to their oppressors. So it's like you've sided against your own people with the oppressors. You've decided to profit by stripping and fleecing your own people on behalf of the Gentile heathen oppressors who don't even belong here in the land that was promised to Abraham Isaac and Jacob and so forth. So this prejudice is rooted in the thought that the tax collectors have cut themselves out of the community. They've also sort of cut themselves out of the kingdom by going against Israel. They are in a state of sort of civil and religious self-exile. Even Jesus used this as a basis for teaching, this bias as a basis for teaching. Look at what it says in Matthew 5:46. This is the ESV, and I've supplied the Koine. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? Hoi telonai? Don't even the tax collectors love those who love them? That's not a big deal. But I say to you, Jesus says, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. So loving the people who love you is such a baseline thing that Jesus says even tax collectors do that. Is he being critical of the tax collectors? To some extent, but I think what's more important is he knows his audience would hear those words and say, wow, yeah, even someone as low as a tax collector loves his own family and the people who love him. So you can see that how pervasive the bias was. If the lowest of the low will do it, surely it's no big deal if you do it. They are among the most hated of people in the time that the New Testament is written, but Jesus treats them like any other. Remember what we read on Sunday in Koine Corner? All the tax collectors and sinners were coming to Jesus. The scribes and Pharisees grumbled and said, this man not only welcomes and receives the tax collectors and sinners, but he even eats with them. So he treats them like he does everyone else. Most importantly, take a look at Matthew 9, verse 9. We're not going to read it here. You can go and take a look at Matthew 9, verse 9. Jesus takes a tax collector, a guy named Levi, Matthew, and makes him one of his own disciples. And he winds up writing what we consider the first of the Gospels in the New Testament, Matthew's Gospel. So the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all share a similar posture about tax collectors. They feature prominently and not in a good way. John, interestingly enough, ignores the tax collectors, doesn't cut them out as being a sort of a super class of sinners. So when you see sinners in general, and then you see the term tax collectors broken out as like a super class of sinners, it's because they were thought of that way. If you made the decision to go into an occupation, to negotiate a deal to be a tax farmer, to farm out the tax collecting duties, and to fleece your own people on behalf of the Romans, you were thought of to be a special kind of dirtbag. People don't love tax collectors today, but it's a municipal job. It's not tax farming in the same sense in general, although there are people whose job it is to be subcontracted tax collectors to go chase tax debts. Perhaps, and maybe, you may want to look at them a little differently. But it's a sin against God because it is usually looked at as being dishonest and thieving, but it's also a sin against the community by siding with the Romans against your own people for profit. Are they redeemable? Well, all you have to do is read Matthew, Mark, and Luke to see that they certainly are redeemable. The best evidence is if you read the Gospel of Matthew, it's written by a redeemed tax collector. So I hope that was good for you as a word of the week. Next Sunday, we'll be looking in Koine Corner at the parable of the lost sheep. And hopefully there'll be a good vocab word that we can do a deep dive in for the next word of the week. Until then, Karis Kai Reina Humin, grace and peace to you.